All right, today we are diving deep into one of the most talked about tactical philosophies in football right now, positionism. You can forget everything you know about players just running free. This is all about a master plan, a geometric map where the system is the real superstar. So how does this blueprint actually win games? Let's get into it.
So here's our game plan for today. We're going to start with the core principle, the big idea. Then we'll see how it's actually taught on the training ground. After that, we'll watch it unfold in a match, check out the teams who've really mastered it, and finally, we'll talk about how coaches can bring these ideas to their own teams.
Okay, Section 1. Let's start with the absolute fundamentals. What is positionism really all about? It turns out the answer has everything to do with geometry.
At its heart, positionism is a philosophy of total control. Players don't just have a starting position, they are given very specific zones. And here's the key. Their movement isn't a reaction to what a teammate does. Nope, it's a reaction to where the ball is, all in relation to their assigned zone. In this system, the coach's grand design dictates absolutely everything.
This right here, this is the central mantra of positionist football. You hear this over and over. It's not about chasing the ball. It's about trusting that if every single player is in their correct zone, the ball will naturally find them. The system itself is designed to create the solutions. You know, the easiest way to think about all this is with a simple metaphor. The coach, they're the architect, drawing up a super detailed blueprint. The pitch becomes the map, and the players, they have one job: follow that map down to the letter. They are there to execute a plan that was designed long before kickoff.
Okay, so that brings up a pretty big question, right? How on earth do you get 11 individuals to follow such a rigid blueprint? Well, to answer that, we have to head to the training ground.
Coaching positionism is incredibly systematic. It all starts with pure spatial awareness. You'll see coaches marking out zones all over the pitch with cones. Next up is timing. They use something called shadow play, where the team runs through attacking patterns with no defenders just to drill the rhythm of the movements. And finally, it all comes together as players master the relationship between their zone, their teammates' zones, and of course, the ball.
The coaching style is, well, it's direct. It's unambiguous. These aren't suggestions. They are commands. It's just a constant reinforcement of that spatial map, repeated again and again until every movement becomes second nature. Now, this is where it gets really fascinating. Why do they do all this? The entire point of this intense training is to preload the tactical instructions into the players' minds. By doing all the heavy thinking during the week, players are freed from having to make complex decisions in the heat of a match.
And get this, there's actual data to prove this works. Think about all the thousands of decisions a player has to make. Analysts call this the cognitive code load. And our analysis of over 800 matches shows that positionist teams have way lower scores. Why? Because most of the thinking was done in training. This seriously reduces mental fatigue and lets players execute faster and more automatically on game day.
So we've got the theory down, and we've seen how it's drilled on the training pitch. Now let's see how this blueprint actually looks during two of the most critical phases of any game: building up from the back and pressing the other team.
When you watch a positionist team build up play, nothing is by accident. The whole structure is designed to create these perfect geometric shapes, like triangles, which means there's always a passing option. Players are coached to occupy the half spaces, those really awkward areas for defenders between the center and the wing. And those overlapping runs you see, they're not spontaneous bursts of genius, they are pre-planned moves in specific channels. It's the perfect example of players just executing the map.
And believe it or not, the exact same logic applies to defending. The press isn't started because one player feels like it's a good idea. No, it's triggered by a spatial condition. For instance, the rule might be, when the ball enters zone 14, we go. The system itself activates the press, and every single player knows their role in advance, whether it's closing down the ball or covering the space behind.
So what's the result of all this clarity? Well, you get a higher communication implementation rate, or CIR. Basically, that's a fancy way of saying the instructions are crystal clear. It's like a light switch. It's on or it's off. The ball is either in the trigger zone or it isn't. This gets rid of any confusion and leads to incredibly coordinated team movements.
Of course, not every team that uses positionism looks identical. The philosophy is flexible. So let's take a look at 3 elite clubs who are absolute masters of the map, each with their own unique flavor.
You can really see 3 different styles here. You've got Manchester City, who are the pure, structured version, where the coach is the unquestioned architect.
Then there's Bayern Munich, who add this layer of overwhelming dominant intensity to their spatial system. And then you have Barcelona, who use a more collective approach, giving players freedom. But, and this is key, it's freedom within the geometric map, not outside of it.
And if you're wondering just how committed Barcelona is to this philosophy, well, their positionist score is a -5.3. That makes them the single most positionist team in our entire 96-team dataset. Those famous passing triangles, they are the ultimate expression of this entire idea.
And if you want to see that dominant style in action, just look at the data on defensive lines from teams like Bayern and PSG. They hold these incredibly high lines, averaging just 36 and 37.6 meters from their own goal. That is a commanding, almost arrogant application of positionism, squeezing the pitch and basically imposing their will on the opponent. Okay, so we have gone through the theory, the training, and we've looked at the pros. But how can you, whether you're a coach or an analyst, actually start to use some of these ideas? Here are 3 really practical takeaways. First, define your key zones explicitly. Don't just tell a player drift inside. Tell them to occupy the left half space. Be precise. Second, preload your instructions. Do the hard work in training during the week so you're not screaming a million things from the sideline on match day. And third, you have to audit your team's shape. You need a way to measure if your players are actually sticking to the plan.
And you can measure this. There's a metric called hybridization deviation, or HD. In simple terms, it tracks how far players drift away from their assigned zones. You can think of it like a discipline score. The lower the number, the better. And the most disciplined teams out there, like Chelsea and Getafe, they average just 13.1 meters. So a great target for any team trying this would be to keep that number under 18 meters.
So if you only take one thing away from this whole explainer, let it be this. Positionism is, at its core, a philosophy of control. It's all about designing the structure that is so strong and so well drilled that it creates excellence through repetition and predictability, not just random moments of genius. And that, of course, leaves us with the big question that everyone in football is debating. In a game that's only getting faster and more complicated, which approach is going to come on top? The rigid map of the architect or the creative freedom of the artist? Honestly, that debate is far, far from over.